Sarah Martinez stepped into the Grand Plaza Hotel, taking a deep breath as she adjusted the soft fabric of her blue dress. The marble floors gleamed under the chandeliers, casting reflections that danced across the towering crystal vases filled with pristine white roses. Everything about the place screamed wealth, the kind of wealth she had never known. But today was not about money or status. It was about her daughter, Emma. Her heart swelled at the thought. Emma, her bright, hard-working daughter, was getting married. Despite the tension that had been building in the weeks leading up to this day, Sarah had convinced herself that nothing could overshadow the happiness of seeing her daughter walk down the aisle. But the moment she saw Emma hurrying towards her, her stomach tightened. "You made it," Emma said, her voice filled with forced cheerfulness. She was still in her regular clothes, her bridal gown nowhere in sight. Sarah noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands fidgeted, a habit from childhood whenever she was nervous. "Of course I made it, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss your big day for anything." Sarah reached out for a hug, but Emma hesitated, glancing around before stepping back. "Mom, I need to tell you something," she said quickly, wringing her hands. James's family, they made some changes to the seating arrangements. A cold feeling settled in Sarah's chest. "What kind of changes?" Emma swallowed hard. "They moved your seat to the back, near the kitchen entrance." She rushed to explain. Patricia said it was because of the photographer's setup, but her voice trailed off, her eyes filled with guilt. Sarah felt the sting of humiliation but forced herself to stay calm. She had expected something like this ever since Patricia Thompson had taken over the wedding planning, treating the event more like a corporate merger than a celebration of love. Still, hearing it confirmed hurt more than she had anticipated. Before she could respond, a sharp voice cut through the lobby. "Emma, what are you doing down here? We need you in the bridal suite immediately." Patricia Thompson strode toward them, her designer heels clicking against the marble. She barely spared Sarah a glance, her sharp eyes sweeping over her with thinly veiled disdain. "Oh, you're here," she said flatly. Sarah straightened her spine. "Hello, Patricia. The hotel looks lovely." Patricia's lips curved into a practiced smile. "Yes, well, we wanted everything to be perfect for James and Emma." She turned to her future daughter-in-law. "Darling, your hair appointment was scheduled for 10 minutes ago. We can't have you running late." Emma hesitated, glancing at Sarah. "Mom, Go on," Sarah said gently. "It's your day. Don't worry about me." Emma bit her lip but nodded, disappearing up the grand staircase. As soon as she was gone, Patricia's polished smile dropped. "Listen," she said, her voice low and sharp. "I know Emma insisted on having you here, but let's be clear, you do not belong in our circle. The Thompsons have a reputation to maintain." Sarah kept her voice steady. "I am here for my daughter." "Yes, and you can support her from the back of the room." Patricia's tone was dismissive. "We do not need your modest circumstances ruining the wedding photos." Sarah clenched her hands at her sides, willing herself to remain calm. "Oh, and one more thing," Patricia added, her smile as sharp as glass. "We've arranged for the staff meals to be served at your table." It seemed appropriate. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone in the grand lobby, the weight of humiliation pressing down on her. But beneath that embarrassment, something else stirred, a quiet, unwavering resolve. Sarah stepped into the grand ballroom, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. The space was breathtaking. Towering floral arrangements adorned every table, crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow, and waiters in crisp uniforms moved with precision. It was the kind of luxury that people like the Thompsons took for granted. She scanned the room, looking for her seat. When she finally spotted it, her stomach tightened. Tucked behind a thick marble pillar near the kitchen doors, her table was barely part of the event. The soft glow of candlelight barely reached it, and the swinging doors nearby let out occasional bursts of noise from the kitchen. It was unmistakable. Patricia had not just moved her to the back. She had shoved her out of sight, as if she were an embarrassment. "Mrs. Martinez?" Sarah turned to see a young woman in a hotel uniform approaching her. She had a kind face and dark eyes filled with something unexpected, sympathy. "I'm Jenny, from Event Services." The young woman hesitated, then glanced around before lowering her voice. "We were told you'd be seated here." Sarah nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "That is correct." Jenny hesitated, then leaned in slightly. "I just wanted to say, we all know who you are." Sarah frowned. "I am not sure what you mean." Jenny smiled softly. "My sister was in County General last year, when you worked through that terrible 30-hour shift during the accident crisis. You saved her life. I remember you sitting with her, holding her hand when the doctors were too busy. She still talks about you." Sarah blinked in surprise. She had been so exhausted that night, she barely remembered details, only the sheer number of people in need and the overwhelming responsibility pressing down on her. Jenny continued, glancing at the other hotel staff. "We all think it's wrong how they are treating you. Just know if you need anything, we are on your side." Sarah looked at the young woman, at the silent support in her expression. It was in that moment that the humiliation began to fade, replaced by something stronger. She had spent decades working in hospitals, saving lives, holding the hands of strangers in their worst moments. She had raised her daughter alone, sacrificed her sleep, her comfort, her personal life, to ensure Emma had the best opportunities. And yet, here she was, being shoved into a corner, dismissed like a nuisance, simply because Patricia Thompson did not see her as worthy. She straightened her spine. No. She was not going to be diminished. A memory surfaced, one that made the corners of her lips lift slightly. A favor. A powerful one. Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, her fingers moving quickly over the screen. As the call connected, she glanced across the ballroom, where Patricia Thompson stood at the center of a small group, whispering behind her manicured hand. "Is that her?" one woman murmured, her eyes flicking toward Sarah. "Yes," Patricia said, her voice just loud enough to carry. "The mother who works as a nurse?" A quiet chuckle rippled through the group. Sarah ignored it, pressing the phone to her ear. "Hello, Marcus," she said smoothly. "It is Sarah Martinez. Remember that favor you owe me? I think it is time to cash it in." As Patricia continued to bask in her own arrogance, Sarah watched her, a calm certainty settling over her. The Thompsons had spent so much time ensuring she felt small, never realizing that they had just given her the perfect opportunity to remind them exactly who she was. And they were about to learn the hard way. The ballroom buzzed with conversation, the polished laughter of high society guests filling the air as waiters weaved through the tables, refilling glasses of expensive champagne. Patricia Thompson stood at the center of it all, radiating confidence as she spoke to a group of women who hung onto her every word. Sarah remained at her table, unseen and unheard, exactly how Patricia wanted her to be. Then it happened. Across the room, Jenny and 3 other servers moved toward the exit, their backs straight and heads held high. The first sign that something was wrong came when Jenny unbuttoned her uniform, revealing street clothes underneath. The others followed suit. Patricia's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. "Where are you all going?" Jenny turned, unbothered by Patricia's sharp tone. "We quit." The room went silent. Before Patricia could fully process what was happening, more staff members began walking out. The bartenders packed up their tools, the parking attendants abandoned their posts, and even the wedding coordinator calmly shut her laptop and made her way to the door. "Wait," Patricia's voice wavered for the first time. "You cannot just leave. We have a contract." A deep, authoritative voice rang out from the ballroom entrance. "Actually, they can." Heads turned as Marcus Chen, CEO of the Grand Plaza Hotel, stepped into the room. He was impeccably dressed, his presence commanding immediate attention. The Thompson family's smug confidence faltered. Patricia's face went pale. "Mr. Chen." Marcus held up a hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but due to the mistreatment of one of our honored guests, the Grand Plaza will no longer be hosting this event. All staff have been instructed to cease operations immediately." Gasps rippled through the room. James's father shot up from his chair. "This is outrageous. Do you have any idea how much we have paid for this wedding?" Marcus remained unfazed.
Yes.
And do you have any idea how much this hotel values its integrity? We do not serve those who belittle and disrespect others. The entire room seemed frozen in time. Patricia's lips parted in disbelief, her carefully curated world unraveling in front of her eyes. Emma stood near the front, her face drained of color. "Mom, what is going on?" Sarah slowly stood up. Every eye in the room was now on her, but unlike before, she no longer felt small. She walked forward, her steps unhurried, calm. "What is going on?" she said, her voice steady. "Is that this wedding will still take place. But under new management." A murmur ran through the crowd. Sarah turned to Marcus, who gave her a knowing nod before gesturing toward the entrance. Within moments, hotel staff returned, this time with a new catering team rolling in fresh serving carts, a crew of replacement waiters, and a seating chart in hand. "This wedding is about my daughter," Sarah continued, "not about status, not about exclusion, and certainly not about treating people as if they are beneath you." She met Patricia's wide-eyed gaze. "So here is what will happen. We will continue with the wedding. Everyone who wishes to stay and celebrate is welcome, but there will be new seating arrangements." At that, two staff members moved toward the head table, the one that had been reserved for Patricia and her husband. They quietly collected the name cards and moved them to a different location. Patricia's eyes widened in horror. "You cannot do this." "Oh, but I can," Sarah said, her tone as smooth as silk. "And it is already done." James, who had been watching the entire exchange with growing realization, stepped forward. He turned to Sarah, guilt in his expression. "Mrs. Martinez, I am so sorry. I had no idea my parents were treating you this way." His gaze flickered to Emma, regret shadowing his face. "And I am sorry I did not stand up for you sooner." Emma looked between her fiancé and her mother, tears welling in her eyes. "Mom, I should have said something." Sarah gently squeezed her daughter's hand. "No more apologies. This is still your day. Let's make it a good one." A quiet tension settled over the room. The guests, who had once whispered about Sarah being just a nurse, now exchanged uncertain glances, realizing they had witnessed something much bigger than a wedding. The Thompsons, once the untouchable elite, now sat at a table near the back, near the kitchen doors, where Sarah had originally been placed. Patricia's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, her face twisted in disbelief. But the rest of the room? They clapped. Softly at first, then growing louder, a wave of approval moved through the ballroom. Guests who had once turned their noses up at Sarah now looked at her with something different. Respect. And just like that, the wedding continued, not as Patricia had planned, but as it should have been all along. James stood in the middle of the ballroom, his face filled with shame and regret. The weight of everything that had just unfolded was finally sinking in. His parents had spent years molding him into the perfect heir for their hospital empire, but tonight, in the span of a few moments, he saw them for who they truly were. He turned to Sarah, the woman who had been dismissed, humiliated, and pushed aside, yet had handled it all with grace and dignity. "Mrs. Martinez," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I owe you an apology. I had no idea my parents were treating you this way. I should have noticed. I should have done something." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "And I should have spoken up a long time ago." Sarah held his gaze, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "It is never too late to do the right thing, James." Emma suddenly stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears. "Mom," her voice cracked. "I am so sorry." She let out a shaky breath, her hands gripping Sarah's. "I've spent so much time trying to fit into James's world, trying to make things easier, but I lost sight of what truly mattered. I should have stood up for you. I should have fought for you. And I hate that I did not." Sarah cupped her daughter's face, brushing away a tear with her thumb. "I understand, sweetheart," she whispered. "I have never wanted you to carry my burdens. I just wanted you to be happy." Emma let out a choked laugh, shaking her head. "Happiness is not worth it if it means turning my back on the person who sacrificed everything for me." James took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for what he was about to say next. And I need to make something clear, too. He turned toward his parents, who still sat in stunned silence. I am done. His father's brows furrowed. What do you mean, done? James squared his shoulders, his voice steady. I am stepping away from the hospital administration. Patricia shot up from her chair, her voice shrill. James, you cannot be serious. The hospital is your future, our legacy. No, Mother. James's voice was firm, unwavering. It is your legacy. It was never mine. He looked at Emma, then at Sarah. I am applying to medical school. A shocked silence swept through the ballroom. Sarah's eyebrows lifted slightly, but her heart warmed at his words. Medical school. James nodded. Watching you today, how you handled everything, how you stood your ground with such grace, I realized something. I have been chasing a life that was never mine. I went into hospital administration because it was expected of me. But that is not who I want to be. I want to help people. The way you do. His father scoffed. You do not just walk away from a billion-dollar institution to start over. James turned to face him, calm but resolute. Yes, I do. Patricia's mouth opened and closed, searching for a response, but nothing came. For the first time, she looked powerless. The guests, who had once whispered about Sarah being just a nurse, were now silent for an entirely different reason. The air had shifted. They had come to this wedding believing in the power of wealth and status, convinced that Sarah Martinez was a nobody. But now, they were looking at her through new eyes. She was not just a nurse. She was a woman who had dedicated her life to saving others. A woman who had raised a daughter on her own. A woman who had quietly built something far more valuable than any of the Thompson family's wealth: respect. Slowly, one by one, the guests started shifting toward her, gravitating toward the strength she carried so effortlessly. James turned back to Sarah, his expression filled with quiet admiration. I do not expect forgiveness right away, he admitted. But I hope, one day, I can earn your respect. Sarah studied him for a long moment before offering a small, knowing smile. You're already on your way. The murmur of conversation in the ballroom had shifted. No longer was Sarah Martinez an afterthought in a room full of wealth and power. Now, eyes followed her with curiosity and, in some cases, admiration. But the biggest shock of the evening was still to come. A quiet hush spread across the room as a new guest stepped through the ballroom entrance. Dr. Catherine Reynolds, the state health commissioner, was an imposing figure, tall, elegant, and exuding authority with every step. Even the most powerful guests in the room straightened as they recognized her. Patricia Thompson's face went rigid. Richard Thompson, who had spent the past hour grumbling about lawsuits and damages, suddenly looked very alert. Patricia rushed forward, her voice dripping with forced charm. Commissioner Reynolds. What an unexpected honor. Dr. Reynolds barely glanced at her before turning her sharp gaze toward Sarah. Sarah Martinez. She smiled warmly. I am so glad I could make it, even if I am fashionably late. Sarah blinked in surprise. Dr. Reynolds. I had no idea. The commissioner held up a hand. I would not have missed it, especially after our last conversation. She turned to the crowd, her voice clear and commanding. I wanted to share something important with everyone here today. The entire room fell into silence. Dr. Reynolds pulled a piece of paper from her bag, her expression pleased. After careful review, I am pleased to announce that Sarah Martinez's community health initiative has not only been approved, but we have doubled the funding. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Sarah felt her breath catch. The project she had spent years working on, free medical access for underprivileged communities, expanded outreach programs, better care for those who needed it most, was now a reality. The shock on Patricia and Richard Thompson's faces was something she would never forget. But Dr. Reynolds was not finished. She folded her hands in front of her. There is more. I wanted to discuss this with you in person, Sarah. She paused, letting the anticipation build. I am retiring next year. The governor has been asking for recommendations for my replacement. Sarah's heart pounded. Dr. Reynolds smiled. And I would like to put your name forward. The ballroom erupted. Gasps, Whispers, stunned murmurs. It was as if the ground had shifted beneath everyone's feet. Patricia's expression was frozen in horror, her mouth slightly open, as if struggling to form words. Richard's face was red, his fists clenched. They had spent the entire evening humiliating the one person who now held more influence than they ever could in the healthcare industry. Emma's hands flew to her mouth. "Mom." Sarah swallowed hard, trying to process what had just happened. "Dr. Reynolds, You do not have to answer right away," the commissioner said kindly. "Just think about it. You have dedicated your life to helping people. It is time you got the recognition you deserve." The realization dawned across the room like a slow sunrise. Sarah Martinez, the woman Patricia had shoved to the back of the room. The woman guests had whispered about as just a nurse. She was now being considered for one of the most powerful healthcare positions in the state. Patricia took a small, uncertain step forward. I had no idea," she stammered. Sarah turned to face her, her expression unreadable. "No," she said quietly. "You did not." Before Patricia could respond, James stepped forward. "And there is one more thing." He looked directly at his parents. "I know you assumed that if I left the hospital administration, I would still rely on you. That I would come back." His mother swallowed. "James, of course you will." "I will not." His voice was firm. "If I'm going to pursue medicine, I want to learn from someone I respect." His gaze shifted to Sarah. "I would like you to be my mentor, Mrs. Martinez, if you would have me." Patricia let out a small sound, somewhere between a gasp and a protest. Richard's entire body tensed, as if barely holding in his anger. Sarah studied James for a long moment. Then, a small smile crossed her lips. "I would be honored." Emma let out a quiet laugh, tears in her eyes. "You always told me that success is not about money or power. It is about how many lives you can touch." She reached for her mother's hand. "I see it now. You were right all along." Sarah squeezed her daughter's fingers gently. Patricia and Richard, now fully defeated, remained standing in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by people who no longer cared about their wealth or influence. The power had shifted. And Sarah? She had never needed revenge. She had simply needed to be herself and let the truth speak for itself. The wedding continued, but under new management. Gone was the stiff, pretentious atmosphere that had clung to the event like an expensive but suffocating perfume. In its place was something warmer, more real. Laughter filled the ballroom, the tension from earlier melting away. Guests mingled freely, no longer bound by rigid social circles. The waitstaff, now returned and treated with respect, moved gracefully through the room, serving meals that had been chosen with care rather than status in mind. And at the farthest table, near the kitchen doors, the very one they had assigned to Sarah, sat Patricia and Richard Thompson. Sarah caught a glimpse of them from across the room. Patricia sat stiffly, her carefully curated composure cracked beyond repair. Richard scrolled furiously through his phone, no doubt calculating the social damage of the evening. They were no longer the center of attention. No longer admired, no longer feared. They had become what they had once tried to make her. Irrelevant. But Sarah did not linger on them. Instead, she turned to the real reason she was here.
Emma.
She found her daughter standing on the terrace, looking out at the city lights. The night air was cool, carrying the distant hum of traffic below. Sarah stepped beside her. "You should be inside, celebrating," she said gently. Emma let out a soft laugh. "I needed a moment." She turned to her mother, her expression raw with emotion. "Tonight everything I thought mattered, all the things I worried about, it all feels so small now." Sarah smiled. "Because it was small." Emma swallowed. "For so long, I wanted to belong in James's world. I thought if I tried hard enough, I could prove that I deserved to be there. But I was wrong. It was never about proving myself. It was about remembering who I already am." Sarah reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "Your worth has never been in their approval, sweetheart. Not in their money, not in their name. Your worth is in what you do, in how you treat people, in the life you choose to build." Emma's eyes shimmered with understanding. "Just like you?" Sarah chuckled. "I had to learn that lesson the hard way, 2. For a moment, they stood there together, mother and daughter, looking out at the city. Then, Sarah's phone buzzed in her hand. A message from Marcus. "You've become a legend at the Grand Plaza." A slow smile spread across Sarah's lips. She had not needed revenge. She had not needed to fight, to scream, to tear anyone down. She had simply stood in her truth and let the rest speak for itself.